Good afternoon. My name's Remmel, and this afternoon I'll be talking about International Women's Day. I'm here with Mr. Howells, Miss Manlay, and I'm going to interview on the subject of International Women's Day. So, how do you feel about International Women's Day?
Over to you, Miss Manlay, I think.
So my response to International Women's Day is that I think it's quite sad that we live in a society where we still need an International Women's Day, because presumably such a day is borne out by the fact that women felt that they needed a voice or an opportunity to feel that they were themselves being heard. And I would like to think we should be living in a society where every day is International Women's or Men's Day, and that all our voices are heard all day, every day.
I mean, I'd agree with Miss Manlay. I think that's a very strong point. It is necessary, sadly, today that we do need International Women's Day to make sure that we are aware that the world that we live in isn't equal at the moment, and that perhaps we need to make stronger movements towards it. Certainly myself, having just had a little girl, I'm a big all in favour of International Women's Day, and I hope that when she's an adult that we are in a more equal society where men and women are judged on their talents and abilities equally.
Do you think that men and women are equal in this day, age and society?
I think sadly not. I think there have been great movements towards men and women becoming more equal. I think we have seen some setbacks. I think certainly Donald Trump becoming President of America is probably a big setback for women, and this is why we're seeing huge voices again being raised across the world to counter his very misogynistic and negative views on women. However, there are also great women in power at the moment as well. Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish leader, Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, and dare I say also Theresa May, our Prime Minister. So we do have strong women in power, and that does bode well for the future.
Yeah, I would agree with Sarah. I think probably we've come on, a long way from perhaps if we were having the same conversation 50, 60 years ago. But I think lots of people would agree that we're still not where we need to be, or where perhaps those first wave of women who were really flying the flag of feminism thought that we would be today. And I think that that's quite disappointing. And I think, when we're thinking about some of those feminist writers who were, writing texts like The Handmaid's Tale, and we're now finding that sales of those texts have risen because there is a real feeling that some of those worst fears about the treatment of women that might happen in the future are potentially close to happening right now in some cases. So I would definitely agree with Sir that we're not quite where we need to be.
What's your opinion on women being stereotyped as being weak and fragile?
I'll definitely hand over this, Miss Manlay.
I think it's the same as stereotyping men as being, egotistical and stupid. We have lots of different ways that we like to label people, and we know that labelling people for any reason is naive of us and really ignorant of us. And I think, just looking in the library today and being in a community such as this, we can see that those sorts of labels, they don't really have a place in society anymore. And the idea that you would negatively cast someone as being weak or fragile or stupid and arrogant just because of their sex, I think is a really out-of-date view. And I would like to think that more and more people are understanding that all humans are far more complex than being labelled as one thing or another.
I mean, I'd absolutely agree with Miss Manlay. It's a ridiculous concept, isn't it? And as a media studies teacher, we have to deal in stereotypes, but we often then make sure that students understand that they're not real. And they're not true. And grouping people is a very dangerous thing to do. So we shouldn't do it at all. It was in the European Parliament recently where the MEP, I think, stood up and started belittling women in that way. And it was such a great moment that the Spanish MEP just stood up and showed that there was nothing weak or vulnerable about her, and used her intelligence, her wit and her strength to overcome him and his very negative attitudes on women.
My final question is that a lot of pressure is put on boys when we have to express our feelings, and I personally think that it's hard for me to burst out in tears if I need to cry. So I wanted to know if I was wrong for feeling that way.
I often cry, especially when Wales lose the rugby. It's not seen as a negative thing. I think it's important today actually to be a role model. There are moments when these things they happen, people cry, whether you're a boy or a girl. I don't think gender has anything to do with that, and as soon as we can overcome that, people who can express their emotions will be able to talk about themselves more freely and probably prevent things in the future that are negative.
Yeah, I think there is a real stigma against men showing emotion and men crying, but I also think there's a bit of a stigma these days about anybody showing any kind of weakness or vulnerability, and we're kind of taught all the time that to cry is, you know, a real weakness, and to show vulnerability is a really bad thing. And I think I understand why people feel like that, but I think, you know, if we really thought and were perhaps a bit more insightful, we would understand that vulnerability is not necessarily a bad thing, that understanding and showing empathy and being able to recognise our emotions and handle them appropriately is a really, you know, excellent part of, you know, becoming a more well-rounded person. And I think, you know, in any given circumstances, it would be shocking to think that somebody expressing emotion would be something to be critical of, men or women.
Okay, that was a really good interview with you two, Mr. Howells, Ms. Manlay.
Thank you, Remmel. Lovely. Nice to be able to talk about this topic.
And very good questions as well, Remmel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of myself, I would like to say Happy International Women's Day to all my female friends.